What is the definition of a person? What are we made of?
Cells.
Cells. How many cells are we?
100 trillion.
100 trillion cells, right? Is that a lot to you? Yeah. I mean, it's like, what's our national debt?
About the same.
Do we have more cells than national debt or less cells than national debt in dollars? So 100 trillion cells, what do those cells have to do? How does that help us function, right? Because they're all individual, like little cells. So what do they have to do to make us function?
You mean like
Communicate
They
with
do have to be healthy in order to communicate with each other, right? So what are the different modes of communication that our cells use? They send and receive chemical and electrical impulses. Okay, so they send and receive chemical and electrical impulses. So let's talk about electrical impulses. Where are those generally generated? For the most part, it's our brain, right? That's sending, so some like reflexes and things like that can actually be derived from that particular area. But what's our brain made of? This is when it gets confusing. What's our brain? Cells too, right? So there's a very intricate system that goes into all of this. But I used the analogy last week. Somebody comes in here with like an AK-47 and points it at you. How do your cells communicate with each other? Like, what do they do? So they get excited. There's a response that prepares you for fight or flight. So there's something that, because of the perception of threat, that our body goes into a fight and flight or freeze mode. I think freeze is a thing too, just like I don't know what to do. Deer in a headlight. Okay, so what makes us feel that way? Now, I'm not saying the person, but what inside of us. So what did that stimulate inside of us? Yeah, right. So there's a hormonal cascade which has a very real effect on pulse rate, vasodilation, vasoconstriction, strength levels can go up throughout all this kind of stuff. Guess what also does that? Caffeine, lots and lots of caffeine. Right, so that gives us a real response. But what do you think about appetite levels? Where does that come from and why does it happen?
Does stress make you want
It can, right? So stress can stimulate a lot of different, and different levels of stress can stimulate a lot of different responses. But all of those responses are chemical, hormonal, or electrical impulse responses. So our entire existence is just a whole bunch of cells that are just communicating with one another. And perception is very, very critical and key to this, right? So the guy who comes in with the AK-47, points it at all of us, takes all of our money, pulls the trigger at the end, and all that comes out is water. It was just a really, scary-looking squirt gun. So there was really no real threat to us, right? But it was our perception that gave us a real response. So many of us are having real responses to perceptions of stress, right? So what are the kind of the three things that we need to survive in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Food, water, shelter, right? Sleep's definitely a part of that. That's going to be, but food, water, and shelter. So any real stress, any stress hormone in our body is designed to help us survive in a lack of food, a lack of safety, or a lack of water, right? So stress stimulates us to go find food, right? If I perceive stress, that hormonal response in my body, regardless of if I'm dying of starvation or not, is going to give me some other chemical signals that will cascade into go find food, okay? It's also going to stimulate me to want to start to work, to do things. But do I just do things if I'm in a caveman setting or in a nature setting? Am I just going to do things in my head? Am I going to type on a computer all of the stuff that I'm supposed to do? Am I going to conceptualize? No, I'm going to go physically exert myself and create a shelter, physically exert myself and go catch a gazelle, or physically exert myself and run away or fight a bear or a lion. But all of those things, guys, those are all responses, physical, genuine, real chemical responses. So what we're focused on here as a class, right, is figuring out how we can optimize those particular responses. And I have to make this general enough to where you guys can take this information and apply it specifically to your life. So I want to kind of discuss those particular hormonal influences that cause that. And then also talk about, how we can satisfy those needs while simultaneously creating health for ourselves. There are basically there's two different kinds of chemicals in our body. There's motivational chemicals and there's satisfactory chemicals, right? So the motivational ones are great, right? That makes us, like ghrelin, that makes us need to go and find food. And that's important for us because we don't have calories and nutrients, we die. But at the same time, we also need to have a hormone leptin that will tell and train our body to, feel satisfied from eating. Because a lot of, like myself especially, I'll eat something and eat something and eat something, and I won't be hungry anymore, but I also won't necessarily feel satisfied either. So then I just keep going and going and going and going and going. Why the heck is that? Anybody experience that? Right? So like, why is that? What can we do to promote healthier cells? Same thing with stress response, right? So when I have a major stress response, so cortisol, the different epinephrine, norepinephrine, your adrenal hormones, that motivates me to go do something, right? So there is a lot of different hormones that kind of counteract that, but one of the most powerful ones is insulin, right? A lot of us are scared to death of insulin. Who's scared of insulin? Yeah, right? Because what is insulin? When you say you're afraid of insulin, I hope you don't mind I'm picking on you. When you say you're afraid of insulin, why would you be afraid of insulin?
I don't know. For what I hear on the news,
Uh-huh.
so I have nothing, no ailment, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's needles. There's.
Okay.
I'm assuming there's sugar involved.
Right, for sure. Right. So if you have type 1 diabetes or you have type 2 diabetes, your blood sugar is so high, you may need to inject insulin into your body, which lowers your blood sugar level. Right? Is it bad to have your blood sugar levels where they're supposed to be if they're too high? No, it's a really good thing. And insulin also reduces our feelings of stress and angst, and it can help us fall asleep even. So the reason why our body releases insulin, you're right, is because there's sugar in our bloodstream that's higher than it should be.